Peace and power, freedom and decolonization. It is a pleasure again to have you on this lecture of today as part of the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy training program, where we are aimed at producing new leaders who are competent in politics and in business. My name is King Kabbalah, member of the African Continental Unity Party, member of the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, and I'm happy to have you on this new session again. Today, we are talking about leadership in the African context. We need to talk about leadership because eventually the whole purpose of this movement, whether we talk about ACUP or we talk about the free-minded, is to create or to produce new leaders. You see, education is the preparation of the future generation. So if we hope to have a better future as African people, our job today is to invest in the industry that produce our children, and that is the educational industry, school. But because our current curriculum at education level or in education is still obviously designed by the people who have never wanted to see Africa better anyway. So it is our responsibility to stand up and to design the curriculum that we believe is fit for our needs and most importantly for the needs of the future of Africa, and begin to teach our children, because as Frederick Douglass said it is easy to raise strong children than to prepare a broken man. So if education is the preparation of future generation, we have no other choice or no other option but to focus on the education of our children today, because those are the ones who are the future generation for Africa. So talking about coming back to the point of leadership, we need to understand what leadership means for us as African people and what is leadership in the African context. And when we understand that, in comparison to what has been leadership in Africa in the recent decades, we will be able to understand what has been wrong, what has been right, where we can improve, and build from there in order to make sure that the new leaders that we are producing from now on, they don't find themselves in a situation of the past, like in the same picture of failure that we have witnessed in the past. That is why we're talking here about leadership. And in most particular way, we want all the potential leaders who attend this lecture, this lesson, to think about how they can apply certain ideas that will be shared through this lecture in their own environment of influence, whether they are business leaders or political leaders. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is there's only one objective that any type of leadership can lead to when it comes to Africa, and we will discuss that as we are moving forward. But now, when we talk about leadership currently, we look at leadership in a Western context of leadership. Let's say in the contemporary understanding of leadership is mostly of having a leader versus followers. It means a leader needs followers for him or for her to be able to exercise. Now, we need to understand what are the limitations of this concept of leadership. What can we do better from there on, and what can we expect, for the better future of Africa? So now, let me quickly share with you the agenda or a few things that we are going to discuss on this topic. Just going to share my screen with you so that you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Give me a second, please. Well, as it has been already said, we are the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy. We are going to talk about Afrocentric leadership. Now, on the agenda of this presentation, we have four subtopics that we want to talk about. We want to talk about the conflict of leadership in Africa. In other words, the conflict between leaders and followers in Africa, or actually generally speaking in the world, but with most attention to the African situation. And after that, we will discuss the role of leadership in Africa, and we'll discuss the means of leadership, and then we'll end by the types of leadership. We'll discuss basically few types of leadership that are well known, and see or answer to the question of what is the proper type of leadership that Africa needs currently for the better future that we want for Africa. Now, as I was trying to talk about, when we think about leadership in the contemporary understanding of things, we look at the person who is a leader versus people who are following the leader. The leader leads followers to the place, obviously, where the followers don't know, because when you talk about leading, you are leading people somewhere, and eventually you know where you are leading people. And mostly it's assumed that people you are leading don't know where you are taking them to. Now, this has been the dominant type of leadership in the world and also in Africa, whereby we need a leader, somebody to guide us, someone to lead us, to take us where we are supposed to be or to go, in order to get our needs met as African people. Now, what has been the conflict between, or the hindrance, or even the challenge or the limitation of this philosophy or this understanding of leadership? That's what we want to begin with. What has been the main characteristic of difficulty that this type of leadership has faced? And why do we want to talk about the main characteristics? Is because all the challenge or the limitation, it is because we have had many leaders in the past in Africa. You can name lots of them. You would talk about Kwame Nkrumah, you would talk about Marcus Garvey, you would talk about Malcolm X, you can talk about Patrice Lumumba, you can talk about Muammar Gaddafi, you talk about a lot of leaders that we have had in Africa. But when we look at the situation of Africa today, we realize that we have not made major advancements, in spite all these beautiful and wonderful leaders that we have had in the past, and some of them we facilitated their death, so to say. Now, we need to understand, that's the reason why we need to talk about this, the conflict between leaders and followers. Because if there was not this kind of conflict or this kind of limitation, all these leaders would have been able to make Africa what it's supposed to be currently. Now, if we are still in the situation where we are today, we need to investigate what has been the shortcoming of the leadership style that we have had in Africa, or even the concept of leadership itself in Africa. And when we understand our limitations, it is easier to build from there and to succeed as we are moving forward. Now, as I said, this concept, this dominant concept of leadership is mostly based on a leader who has followers or people, a group of people who want somebody as a leader to lead them or to show them the path to whatever they want to achieve in life. Whether they want to go to heaven, or they want to succeed in life, they want employment, all this kind of stuff that we need in our lives. In most cases, we rely on leaders to show us the way. Now, the major challenge or the limitation of leadership in Africa, we can bring this also to the world, has been that of ignorant followers or ignorant masses who stand behind or in front of the leader. Why? Because ignorant followers are a very dangerous allies any leader can have. Let me repeat that again. Ignorance of the masses, or ignorant masses, or how can I put it? You understand what I'm saying? Ignorant followers, the followers who don't have the knowledge, who don't have the understanding, are actually a danger or a dangerous ally for allies for the leader, right? And for a leader and his leadership to succeed, he must be able to stand in front of a group of people that is knowledgeable, that is informed, and that is committed to whatever is being done. And we'll get to that development later on as we are moving forward. But the premise here, what we need to understand is when the masses, when the people are ignorant, when the so-called followers are ignorant, it is a dangerous situation for the leader and his leadership model, because they are not the best ally. You see, for a leader to succeed, he needs allies. We call them allies, even though in the modern world they are called followers, but in a better way, in Afrocentric way, we call them allies. So for you as a leader to succeed, either in your business or in your political career, in whatever organization that you are working for, you need a group of informed people, informed allies. If you surround yourself with ignorant people or ignorant followers, you are made a bad choice of allies that you need for you to succeed in your battle. Now let's bring this in proper context for the better understanding. We can begin with the Haitian Revolution. Probably if you are an informed African, you know definitely about Haiti and its revolution in 18th century, right? So what happened in the Haitian Revolution actually was the destruction of all the sugar cane plantation, because these plantations were symbolizing the oppression that our people were going through at the hand of the white oppressors. People were put in those sugarcane plantations to work, day in, day out, without any dignity, any human rights, or any conditions that will improve the lives of the people. People were being used just like tools that have to be worked to produce the wealth of the Western society. As you may know, 3/4 of France or French resources or French economy was sustained by Haiti exploitation of black people in Haiti through sugarcane plantations. Now, as that oppression obviously got to to its obviously most unsupported points, unbearable points, people had to revolt, and that's what we call the Haitian Revolution. And actually, the actions that people took was to burn down those very same plantations. Now, this is what happened after the revolution. People they burned those plantations because they didn't want to do anything with them, because they were the symbol of oppression. Now, after there had to be the continuation of life. That is where the most important thing comes. There has to be a continuation of life. There has to be an economy to sustain the entire society, to produce food, to fund education, to do everything that makes a society functioning. Now, in this case, people didn't want to go back to plantations, even though the sole economy, the economic industry of that time was sugarcane. The economic industry at that time was just sugarcane, but people didn't want to go back in those plantations to produce sugars in order to produce sugar in order to continue the economy. That's where came the challenge. Why? Because in most cases, those people were ignorant. They didn't know that after slavery as a system, we need to work even harder in order to sustain our lives, in order to sustain our economy, in order to improve our conditions. You see, before you were made to work harder for your oppressor, to produce what your oppressor wanted. But now you are free. It is time to work even harder than you worked for him in order to build now for yourself, no longer for the oppressor. And this is what people did not understand. And people refused to go back into those plantations to work and produce what has to be produced, or what had to be produced for the economy of Haiti to flourish. And there was not misunderstanding, there was not conflict between Dessalines as a leader and the people who were supposed to be his allies. You see, and this conflict, we can see it again even during the time of independence in Africa. We can realize when you study country after country, when they were about to gain the independence, people were actually excited to see this industry or this system of colonialism coming to an end. And the fact that the white people were now giving independence to African people, right? For Black people, it was the end of suffering. It was the beginning of joy, happiness, and all kind of dreams that they've had of being free. Now, what they didn't understand for lack of knowledge is that joy, that happiness which they hoped to live as a free people, as decolonized countries, depended on another hard work that people had to be doing. So this has been, in the context of Africa, this has been the challenge or the conflict between leader and followers. Because what happened is that when these people don't want to go back to work, didn't want to go back to plantations to work for themselves, but they expected to eat every day, they expect to see economy growing without production, then we got to the point where they are now hungry. There's no food, there's no employment, there's no job, there's nothing. And guess what? They would turn back to the leader and accuse a leader to be the traitor. And in most cases, I've heard many African people saying that we were better during the time of slavery or during the time of colonialism that we are right now. We are suffering now. This thing of independence, it doesn't work. We are suffering now. We were better during that time of apartheid. The economy was good, education was good, and so was good. But now nothing works. This is the mindset of a typical African person who expects everything to turn suddenly good after the independence. Right? Once slavery or colonialism has been put to an end. But things don't work like that. That is why we say that having a group of ignorant masses or ignorant followers as a leader, it is a very bad choice of allies. You need a group of informed people, group of people who have the knowledge, group of people who understand exactly where they are going with whatever process or struggle they have embarked on, and who understand that at every stage what is the level of sacrifice, what is the level of commitment is needed, what is the cost of this revolutionary agenda or of this change that we want. And when a leader is surrounded by this type of people, he is going to succeed no matter what, no matter how hard is the situation. Just like you, for example, if you have a business, what you need is to be surrounded by the people who understand the politics of the business, of the corporation, right? The people who understand the politics of your organization, people who understand the motto, the vision, the mission, and people who understand the products or the service that you offer, and who understand to whom we can offer, who understand all the strategies of marketing, of finance that you have in place to make your business successful. But if you have people who don't know all of those things, then you're going to be working alone and you cannot succeed alone. And at some point, because those people don't have the knowledge, they will fight back against you. They will fight against you. And when you are dealing with the people who don't have enough information, the only thing that you can do for them is to manipulate them. And manipulation obviously leads to a domination, and the domination itself leads to the oppression. Now, instead of you showing your people the way to a betterment, the way to the achievement of the goals that you had together, now you are the one who are manipulating your people for your own ends. And at that moment, revolution is near, is around the corner. And this is a situation that we have been seeing in Africa. That's why many of leaders that we have had in Africa were betrayed by their fellow citizens, or the people for whom they were fighting for. I mean, by the people they were fighting for. The very same people they were fighting for are the people who sometimes facilitated or actually approved the destruction of those leaders. When you talk about the coup d'etat in Ghana against Kwame Nkrumah, it was perpetrated by African people, even though it was sponsored by CIA and other foreign powers. When we talk about the death of Muammar Gaddafi, it was the same thing. Whether we talk about Patrice Lumumba, it was the same thing, betrayed by his fellow black men, right? So when you fight for people who don't have the basic knowledge of the fight that you have or that you are fighting for, then you are putting yourself in a situation that at the end you will case your commitment, you will case your time spent, your energy and everything, because you will think that you have been doing everything that you did for nothing, not for any worthy purpose. So we need to understand this. We need to think about this. We need to understand this, because this has been the most important setback of our leadership in the past, or of our previous leaders, as I've explained about Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and stuff like that. Even one striking example is about Che Guevara. When he was arrested by Bolivian armies, it was by the help of a shepherd who obviously noticed Che Guevara, where they were actually resting, and called the Bolivian armies to come and eventually capture them. And when they asked him, why do you betray the person who is actually fighting for your freedom? You know what he said? The bullets, the guns, the noise, and all these activities are disturbing my animals, my herds. So it has to come to an end. So this is what happens when people don't understand what is happening in their lives. They will turn to think that you are disturbing their lifestyle, their livelihoods, while you are trying to bring about the change that will improve their conditions. But that process of change will disturb the routine of the people to the point where they will look at you as the one who is a troublemaker, while you trying to end the trouble in their lives. So the challenge has been that, I don't know how you can look at it, no matter how you want to think about it, when it comes to Africa, the setback has been that the ignorance of the masses has been a major setback in whatever that we were able to achieve with our previous leadership. But if we had a group, or the mass that is, if we had a chance to have people who are informed, African people who are knowledgeable of their situation, I think we're actually not going to need so many leaders if we have had them in the past, because things were just going to happen automatically, because people understand what has to be done and are committed to do what is supposed to be done. So ignorance is a big disease, is a cancer to the African growth, is a cancer that actually creates some kind of hindrance to the African takeoff, to the African development, to the African liberation, to be more precise. And the strange thing is that the people don't even know that they don't know. That is the point. People don't know, but they don't even know that they don't know. That's the fact. So that being said, I've already spoken about the conditions that obviously will put themselves in place when your leadership is based, or when you are a leader who leads a mass of ignorant people, or a group of ignorant people who don't know exactly the philosophy that you have as a leader, the politics that you have as a leader, the strategies that you have as a leader, or what are the objectives that need to be achieved of your leadership, what's going to happen is that you will have people that you can only manipulate, and manipulation itself results into a domination, and domination as well ends into the oppression, because everybody who is dominated will always end up being oppressed. Domination will always result into oppression, whether it is called a divine domination or it's called parental domination. It's always going to result into what we call oppression, and oppression gives birth to a revolution. Now, this is what we have been seeing currently in terms of the leadership. That's why we have the so-called leaders who only show up during the time of election because they want to manipulate people. They want to manipulate the people to be elected. And when they go into power, when they go into the public offices, guess what? They enjoy the public money to travel in expenses, trips to please themselves and their families, and the people who elected them stay in the poverty, stay in all these conditions that we see in Africa, right? This is a reality in Africa today. Manipulation. You were never going to see these leaders during the normal time. You only see most of them during the time of elections because they want your vote. They want to manipulate you. They will promise you A, B, C, D, all these things. But when they go into power, most of their first amendments or their first policies will be against the expectation of the masses. And that is why we see mostly in Africa, after any particular policy has been passed in the parliament, we see people on the street to protest against that particular policy. And this has been happening over and over. I don't have to go through all these things because we are all witnesses of this reality. But let's move on to now, what is the leader, or what is a leader supposed to do now, in light of all this explanation that I've provided of what has been the challenge of leadership in Africa? What can we do today as leaders? First of all, the role of leadership in Africa must always correspond to the most pressing needs of African people. And this cannot be other need but that's one of freedom. What Africa needs currently is liberation. What Africa needs currently is liberation. Liberation from imperialism, liberation from neocolonialism, liberation from white supremacy, liberation from any kind of hegemony that has been keeping us down in the condition of misery, suffering, and precarities that we are finding ourselves now as African people. Even though we have resources that can change Africa in the next 1 to 5 years, if we put all these resources to the good use for the development of Africa. So what Africa needs currently is liberation. And therefore, to answer to the question of the role of leaders in Africa, whether you are a leader in the business sector or in the political sector, your role, even if you are a leader in religious field, your responsibility, my responsibility will be to liberate Africa from all these conditions that I've just named. Our responsibility is liberation. And for us to be able to do that, because that liberation is not just the liberation of our people or those so-called followers, but it is also the liberation of ourselves. Because as far as Africa as a whole is concerned, there's nobody who can claim to be free in Africa. There's nobody who can claim to be totally free. All of us, even if you have money, or even if you are a poor African male or female, all of us, we are under the domination of the Western imperialism. Therefore, we all need that one important thing, which is freedom. Therefore, the agenda of freedom is is not your own agenda alone, or is not the agenda of the followers alone. It's our collective agenda. And for this to succeed, what we need to do is to make sure that the people we are surrounding ourselves with have been properly trained, educated to understand the context of today's reality, to understand what are the strategies that Africa needs, or all of us as an organization we need to implement in order to get to that level of freedom. And thirdly, what is the cost of those strategies, or of the change that we want in order to change our reality? What is the cost? And if I can add a fourth point there, I would say, what are the resources we have in order to pay that cost? And that can be skills, that can be energy, that can be money, that can be everything that needs to be put together for the liberation to happen. So this is to say that our first responsibility as leaders is to teach the people, is to teach our people. They need to understand the world, how it works. They need to understand the world in which they are living. Know thyself, know thy enemy, and know thy environment. And this is the key to the freedom that we want. Know thyself, know thy enemy, know thy environment is the key to the freedom that we want. So you cannot be a leader in the 21st century keeping your people in ignorance, thinking that you are going to succeed. No, unless if your agenda is not to liberate Africa, but to manipulate Africa to meet your own objectives. But if our agenda is to liberate Africa, our focus will be in the education of our people, in the conscientization of our people, in the mobilization of our people, in the bringing the consciousness to our people to understand that we are living in a time of danger, but also a time of opportunity. So a leader cannot be willing to dominate the people that he is leading. You see, I spoke earlier on that domination will always give birth to oppression, and that is true, because a person who dominates you will never want to allow you to be better than him. You see, mostly we mistaken to think that parents dominate over their children. In reality, parents don't dominate over their children, and they are not supposed to have that kind of domination over their children, because domination always gives birth to oppression. There's no a parent in his right mind who will want to see his children being oppressed. You see, when you want to dominate somebody, you are never going to teach them to become better than you. But every parent wants his children, every parent who is right up here, he would want, or she would want to see their children doing better than what they did in their time. They would want to see their children doing better, doing far better than what they've been able to do in their life experience. So therefore, parents are not supposed to dominate their children. You know, they are training their children. They are leading their children to achieve even greater goals than what they have achieved. Therefore, you as a leader, if you want to succeed, you cannot base your agenda on domination. To look at the people who have trusted you, who want to follow you, who think that you have something better to offer. You begin to look at them as ignorant masses who have nothing better to offer except to be manipulated for your own achievement. This is not the kind of leadership that we want in Africa. We want an Afrocentric leadership that is based on Ubuntu, which means, as I've explained before, this agenda of freedom concerns all of us, leaders and followers. So we need to work together to achieve this agenda, because we want freedom, all of us. You know, it's not just the masses who want the freedom and us, we don't want freedom. The fact that we are leaders, we don't have to mistaken it to think that we have achieved the freedom. We don't have that need of freedom anymore. It's only the masses who need the freedom. No, that will be a big mistake that cannot allow us to get where we are supposed to go. So, to recap these points, the role of leadership currently in Africa is to liberate Africa. The role of leadership in Africa right now is to liberate Africa. We cannot even talk about development. We cannot even talk about progress, because the first thing that needs to take place in Africa is the liberation of African people. And when these African people have been liberated, they will be able now to develop themselves, because development is a natural process. Fish in the water does not need somebody to lecture it on how to develop or to grow. The birds in the sky don't expect you to go and lecture them on how to develop and to grow. So when every entity, any living entity, when it finds itself in the proper environment in which it was coded to live, it will develop naturally and automatically. So what Africans, or what Africa needs right now, is to get rid of oppression, to get rid of this Western domination and Western oppression, Western hegemony. Once we are free, once Africa is free, what we call development, what we call progress, what we call prosperity will take place automatically, because it is a part of nature. It is a natural law. It will take place automatically. So we as leaders at this moment, we need to fight firstly to liberate our people, to liberate Africa. And the first step to achieve this liberation is knowledge, is to bring knowledge to our people, because currently, when you think deeply about the situation of Africa, about the current oppression, you will see that is more of psychological, is more of mindset. It's no longer that domination of physics, of physical existence, because you see, in the past, Africa was destroyed and dominated physically. That's why people were bought, black people were bought and sold as tools, as animals, as belongings, while the way human beings, they were treated like that by other human beings, because at that stage the oppression and the domination was more of physical. We moved to that stage to come now to a stage of economic exploitation, which we call colonialism, whereby Africa was obviously taken or controlled by, and is still anyway controlled by Europeans to make African work, right, to produce the wealth that the Western society enjoys today. So that is what we call economic exploitation phase of Africa. But all those two phases, whether we talk about physical oppression or psychological oppression, the mindset of Africa, of an African person was still really not totally conquered, but we are at the moment where the mindset is totally destroyed. This is a very important stage of destruction at which we are living. So as leaders, we need to focus firstly in teaching our people, in bringing about the knowledge that will bring back to life, that will bring or create what I call the resurrection of African, of black men and black women, so that we can resurrect from this mental death in which we find ourselves today, to now come to the point where we consider ourselves based on our culture and our tradition, and most importantly, based on what we have as aspiration for the future. This is what we're talking about. And if you are unable to achieve this, then your purpose is to manipulate your people, and manipulation, as I said, will lead you to dominate the people that you are manipulating, and that domination will give birth to the oppression of your own people, your own kind, and people who are oppressed sooner or later will embark on that journey of revolution, and you cannot resist the revolution. So, as I said, liberation is our goal as leaders. Now, how do we achieve this liberation? This is the most important thing. We achieve this liberation by building organization. So, in other words, as a leader, we need to begin thinking about how we can organize our people for meaningful results. Because you see, today the reality is knowledge is everywhere, right? Sometimes in the past, knowledge was a kind of hindrance to the liberation of African people, but today knowledge is everywhere. And somebody was right to say that at this age, ignorance is only a choice. And that is true. So knowledge is everywhere. Now, this knowledge alone, as I said, we firstly need to teach our people that the knowledge alone is not enough for the liberation of Africa. We need to now implement another step further, which is to organize the people that we have been educating, people that we have been teaching, people that we have been providing information. These people need to be organized so that our actions can produce meaningful results. You see, I'm going to tell you one thing, very important. When you look around the continent today, you will see that we have so many PhDs, we have so many master degrees, we have so many so and so who are called educated in the context of today's educational system, but they are unable to change the reality of Africa. You see, these so-called educated people, we assume that they have the knowledge, but they are unable to change the reality of Africa. And the reason is that knowledge is not organized or put together for meaningful results. That's where leadership comes. Now, let me put all these things in one context to explain exactly what is leadership supposed to be in the African context or in an Afrocentric perspective. Assume that you are somewhere in a bush in the middle of nowhere. You were going somewhere and you got lost, and this actually has happened to me in the Congo where I was born. I found myself in the park. It's called National Park de Kundelungu. We were going somewhere, but we got lost actually. So it took us 2 weeks to go to get to the destination where we were supposed to go. So we were lost actually. The car that we had was stuck. The disc, the clutch was burned, and we didn't know how to move forward anymore. But we had to find a town because we were in the middle of the bush. We had to find a town so that we can get help from the town, but we didn't know where is the town from where we were. We were in the middle of nowhere in the bush. So what we had to do was to do some kind of brainstorming. Everyone had to come up with an idea. Okay, I think we can do this. And then after collecting all those ideas as we had to agree on what we think or what we thought to be a good idea, right? And we had to implement that idea. And the idea was, let us find a town first of all, right? And when we find a town, we'll eventually seek for help, and we'll see how we can solve the problem of the car, and we'll see how we can eventually progress our journey towards the destination. That's what we did. So now that objective of finding a town was now our vision and was now automatically our leader, because you see, nobody knew exactly where the town was in that group where we were. Nobody knew where the town was. So we decided together, okay, now we want to find a town. Okay, the sun rises from this side and then obviously drops from that side. So we came from this side, so let's go on this direction. Probably we can find a town there. Let's look, if there's any smoke somewhere around there, we can follow that smoke, we may find a town. So we had to think different, everyone has to bring his skills, his survival skills. And we decided, let's go in that direction. So the town became our destiny and became our leader. Everyone is moving toward the town. We know that our salvation is in the town. We know that all of us want to get to the town. And therefore the town became our leader. There's nobody else there who was leading us. There's no one there who was telling us, okay, you need to move, you need to walk, you need to lift you need to lift your foot and walk and do this. No. We didn't need that. We didn't have the need of those kind of instructions. We didn't have any instructor to tell us what to do, because we had already decided collectively what we needed was to get to the town, and the only thing that was leading us was our desire to get to the town, and the town itself was our point of reference as far as leadership was concerned at that moment. So we walked, we got lost at some point, and we sat down again. We redesigned our plane, we changed our plane, we changed our direction. We used that strategy until we got to the town, until we discovered the town, we got the assistance that we needed, and eventually we found ourselves to the destination where we were going, which is the park. So, and I'm always thinking that this is the right approach that the contemporary leadership in African context must use to get us where we are supposed to go. Because in reality, when you think about it, we don't really need a leader at this moment, because we already have a leader. And the leader that we have as African people is our desire to achieve freedom or liberation, right? Because we know already what we want. We know where we are supposed to go, is to get to the point where Africa is free. So this is a mandate, or this is a mission for myself. This is a mission for you, and this is a mission for anybody who you can lead. So it becomes our collective objective. So there's no need for anybody to come and tell you what you are supposed to do for your political organization, what you are supposed to do for your business. Our goal has been set already, and that goal is the leader that we have. Let's say, for instance, you are a student. You don't need always people to come and tell you every morning it's time to wake up, it's time to take a shower, it's time to dress yourself, it's time to go to school. No. Automatically, you know that the vision that you have for your education, the objectives, the ambitions that you have for your own education is what leads your efforts every day. To wake up early in the morning, to study, to revise your lessons, and to go to school to study and to achieve that goal. The same for people who are working. You know you have objectives that you have in life. You want to achieve 1 or 2 or 3 goals that you have set for yourself. So you need to work. You need to wake up in the morning, go to your job, do your job properly, get paid at the end of the month, and put some money aside, so that at the end of the year you can achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. So in some ways, we are already involved in this leadership style, and we practice every day. We practice it every day, but we don't just realize. And if we can take the very same concept to apply it to the reality of Africa, to our reality as African people collectively, you will realize that you don't necessarily need anybody to come and lead you for your own liberation. Because the person that you expect to lead you to the liberation, he needs also the liberation, or she needs also the liberation, the same liberation that you need. So therefore, the goal or the plan here is to come together and discuss together what we want to achieve, or what kind of strategies we can put in place to achieve our common goal of liberation. And those strategies will now lead us, or the achievement of that objective that we have collectively will lead us, will lead our effort every day, will lead our struggle every day. When you wake up in the morning, you will ask yourself, what can I do to achieve this objective of African liberation and emancipation? When I wake up in the morning, I will ask myself, what can I do today to advance this agenda of African liberation and African emancipation? I do that, you do that, somebody else does it, and all of us together, we are working towards that objective, that collective objective of African liberation and emancipation. And in de facto, that objective is our leader, is what leads us The vision is what leads us. That's what we say in the ACUP. We say that ACUP is a political party which does not have a leader, because our leader is the vision. All of us, we put ourselves behind that vision to fulfill it. So all of us, we are potential leaders. When you join the ACUP today, you are a potential leader. When I joined ACUP, I was made a potential leader. So the objective of those who are already in the party is to provide the knowledge, the information to those who have joined, in order to eliminate ignorance in them. Because as I said, ignorance has been and will always remain the danger for any leader. If you keep and entertain a group of ignorant people, you have surrounded yourself with a very dangerous allies. The strategy for the current leadership that we want for the future of Africa is to make everyone knowledgeable of the agenda. Everyone must be knowledgeable of the reality. There shouldn't be certain things reserved to a class of people and other things that cannot be known by other people or cannot be done by other people. This is what has structured the current world in its current hierarchy, whereby by the fact that you are enjoying that privilege of gaining some information that are not passed, or that is not passed to the rest of the people, you begin to think of yourself in a very high esteem and look down on other people as people who don't have the same skills as you have, people who don't have the same capacity as you have. And this can always result in some kind of supremacy that we have come to witness in this world. You see, so we don't want to have this repeating for the future, or repeating itself in the future. And we need to correct things by coming up with this Afrocentric leadership based on Ubuntu. A leadership that is based on the vision, not on individuals. It's based on the vision, not on individuals. You see, in one word, I would say, let the vision lead. Let the vision guide. Let the vision leads. Let the vision guides. And all of us must put ourselves behind the vision and work for the accomplishment of that vision. If I am in charge of communication, I need to do every day what I'm supposed to do to make sure that my responsibility or my task of communication is done perfectly and effectively. If you are in charge of fundraising in your organization, you must do the same. Even in the business, right? In the business sector, there's something that is called management by objective. Management by objective, it means you and your workers, or the people that you are leading in your organization, you sit down. For example, you have a production to make, you have a service to render to your clients. So you sit down with your team and discuss how can we provide this service in the most effective and efficient way to our clients, and make sure that we keep this client satisfied. And eventually, because in most cases you are not the one who is going to do that job, it's your team. People among your team are the ones who are supposed to do that job. So you see, it's better to build the agenda together and to get the input from the people who are involved in the job itself. So when you decide together what is supposed to be done and how it's supposed to be done, then you leave the job to the people, to the team. And you have set up already deadline, the report and all those kind of stuff we have discussed. And then you leave everything to the people. So when the deadline comes, then you come and ask for report. What has been done, how it was done, what is the feedback? If it was not done, why it wasn't done, how can we correct, how can we do better from now on? You see, this is called, in the business world today, it's called business management by objective. So it's more like the same thing that we're talking about when it comes to our collective conditions. So whether you are a leader in the business sector or you are a leader in the political sector, you need to understand that we are no longer at that time of looking down on people as ignorant as worthless as the people who are there only to advance your own agenda, to provide you with the power, luxury, or leverage that you want to achieve your own objective. No, that time is long past. We are now in a time where if you utilize your surrounding properly, if you productively utilize your interaction with your team, with your people, you'll be able to reap better benefits out of it. You see, and you'll be able to achieve effective results out of it. This is the bottom line. So let the vision lead. Let the vision lead. So make the vision understandable to everyone. Set goals for everyone, right? And then work together to achieve those goals. So this is actually the bottom line of this Afrocentric leadership style that we are talking about. We are no longer in time of keeping the masses ignorant, because it's not going to help us. We are at a time of danger, but also time of opportunity. The best thing that we need to do now is to guarantee the freedom of Africa, and most importantly, the freedom of our children. Because if we fail at this point, our children will have to go through another 400 or 500 years of a very harsh slavery. I don't know how they may be able to recover from that slavery. So the point here is that the current leadership model that we have in Africa is based on manipulation, domination, and oppression of the masses. Not really about empowering people so that together we can achieve our collective agenda of freedom and liberation. That is why Marcus Garvey said that when you go into other communities, other races, other people, you see that everyone generally speaking, every race of people have the people who betray that race or who betray the good agenda of that race. And when you go to other people, you find that the people who betray them are among the excluded one, those who have been excluded from opportunities, from the economy, those who are poor, those who are disenfranchised and stuff like that. Those are the ones who are prone to betray their people and the good agenda of their people. But the contradiction of this reality is that when you come to the African community, you will find that those who betray African community are among the leaders. That's reality. Not really among the poor and among those who are disenfranchised, but mostly among the leaders. Those are the ones who are actually in the first line to betray Africa. That is why our agenda today, or our best job, or the best we can do, is to make sure that we produce leaders for the future of Africa, and leaders who are competent in business and in politics. And by making this, we are sure that Africa has a future that we all want. And I've already explained what is the role of leadership in Africa today. And I've already also explained what the leaders are supposed to do in Africa, which is actually the objective of leadership, right? In Africa is the liberation of Africa. And how do we achieve that liberation? We go through organization. Now, let me give you one practical example. In your community, wherever you are, in your village, in the society in which you live today, there are needs. There are needs there. Pressing needs. People need to eat. People need to shop. People need to sell. People need to do different things for the society to function. Now, in most cases, when you come in African communities, you'll find that mostly these needs that we are supposed to fulfill every day are now being fulfilled, or are now being obviously provided to us by foreigners, by Chinese. If you go in our communities, you see that most of supermarkets, most of stores are now owned by Chinese, by Arabs, by Lebanese, by Indians, by all these aliens who have no interest of Africa at their hearts. And this is how how the new projects of African enslavement starts. Because when you are supposed to go to other people for your food, when you are supposed to go to other people for your clothes, when you are supposed to go to other people for anything that you need, it means you will get to the point where you don't produce anything for yourself. You only rely on what they have to produce. But for you to get the money to buy, you need to be employed by them. So it means our life will rely on them, on what they do, and they will easily control our life, and they can eventually dictate the future of Africa. So now, the first basic organization, as we're talking about organizing our people for the liberation of Africa, the basic organization should start in our communities. So start in our communities to organize our people in order to evacuate all these aliens businesses in our communities and replace them with our own community-owned businesses. And this is very much possible. We can do it. When you look at all the bottle stores in Africa today, right? Walk along any community of African people, you see bottle stores mostly owned by foreigners. You will see shops, you will see a lot of things on which we spend lots of money for a short-term pleasure, which has no substantial input or transformation or change of our lives or of our conditions. We drink, we smoke, we do all these things just to feel good, but not to build something strong over which our future generations can eventually flourish, develop, and progress, right? If we can take the half of all this money that we spend on these things, these feel-good things that we do, we'll be able to build shops for ourselves. Let me give you an example. If you have a $50 in your hands, it's just the $50 that you can use for few things, and it will exhaust, of course. But if you have $50 in the hands of 1,000 people, 10,000 people, right? 50,000 people, and this becomes a huge sum that can be used as investment capital for different projects that can enhance our society in different ways. We can do this. We can do this, but we need leaders who have love of their people, and leaders who teach their people, leaders who organize their people, not leaders who want to manipulate their people, right? So this is what we are supposed to do. And as you come out of this discussion, your agenda or your mindset, your focus will now have to shift from, I don't know, whatever you thought about leadership before. If you thought that being a leader, it's something good because people will serve you, people will honor you, people will worship you, people will respect you. If that was your kind of incentive into looking to becoming a leader, that needs to change. You need to look at yourself now as a person who has to put himself or herself at work for the betterment of his or her society. A person who needs to make himself or herself available for whatever that needs to be done for the betterment of our lives or of our society. And the way to do that is to organize our people in community-owned businesses that have to replace this new invasion of Africa by Chinese, by Europeans, by Indians, by Arab, and so on. And this is actually what we talk about liberation. When we say that we are suffering because we are under alien oppression, that oppression manifests itself because of our reliance in their organization or their institution. Because when we need food, we run to them to get food. When we need clothes, we run to them to get clothes. Why can't we build our own brands of clothes and support those brands of clothes? Why can't we produce our own food and eat our own food in fancy restaurants? Why can't we own our own supermarkets in our communities and evacuate this Chinese? It takes only few steps to do that. We put our money together and we go next to where the Chinese have their shops, and we build our shop there, and we run a campaign through our people: never buy from aliens, buy from this African owned or this community owned shop or business. And in 1 month, the Chinese will be forced to close down their shops because they don't have business anymore. They'll run out of business and will have to evacuate. And this is what we need to do. And we can do this. And we need you as the leaders to engage this kind of discussions in your community, to engage this kind of thoughts in your community, and see what is the projects that can come out of that community, and projects that if eventually is congruent to the needs of that community in which you are living. Whatever business projects that can be done in a Congo cannot be the same in Nigeria, cannot be the same in Angola, but the concept is the same. We need to organize our people, the liberation that we need in Africa. And this is something that needs to be done by all of us. You see, by understanding this, you realize that it needs people more than it needs you as a leader, because the money that we're talking about needs to come out of the people's pockets. So this agenda of liberation is the people's agenda, not your own agenda, or not people alone's agenda. It needs all of us to come collectively, because if it was your own agenda, then you have to spend all the money that is needed to be spent in order to build those supermarkets, to open those supermarkets, to build those brands that we need in Africa or in our communities, to chase this Chinese out of our communities. But we know, and you know, that nobody has the money to conquer these multinational corporates which are invading our communities now with their products, of foreign and inorganic products. So it is only when we bring our resources together, it's only when we bring our resources together that we'll be able to build something substantial that can be competitive in the global economy today. And for us to be able to bring our resources together as African people, we need organizers, people who will establish organizations. And that is the role of the modern leadership, is to build organizations that will help Africa to acquire its liberation and its emancipation. Well, I think I've extensively spoken about this topic. You can think deeply about it and see what is worthy to be done in the context of your own reality. But as part of our commitment to create new leaders, we have provided you at least with the information that sometimes you didn't have, things that you didn't think about before, so that you can at least revolutionize your thinking about the concept of leadership. You can at least re-question your understanding of leadership. What is a leader in this current society in Africa in relation to the expectation of all African people, which is the freedom, which is the liberation and emancipation of Africa? So we hope this has been useful. Now, to close, I'm going to discuss, few principles or few models or types of leadership that are popular in the world today. We have what is called autocratic leadership, we have what is called democratic leadership, and we have what is called transformational leadership. Now, the question, I'm explaining this briefly to ask you a question: what is now the proper leadership style that we need in Africa, after everything that I've explained and after everything that you know about the African situation and African condition? Now, autocratic leadership, we know it is a leadership of an autocratic leader who actually dictates everything by himself, who takes all decisions by himself, who pretends to know everything by himself. And this is not a leadership that Africa needs, for obvious reasons that I've already explained. If you pretend to know all that it takes to get Africa free, you should be free by yourself as we're speaking right now. But as I said, none of us can claim to be free, because we are all collectively and individually affected and living under the oppression, under the hegemony of white supremacy, of imperialism, of neocolonialism, of whatever you call it. That's why we all need to engage each other, discover from each other, and find a path through which we can embark in that agenda, or we can embark in that freedom and emancipation that we all need as African people. And this cannot be done by an autocratic leader who believes that he knows everything. Who believes that he knows everything, and he's supposed to make all the decisions, and whatever he thinks is the best is the best thing that he's supposed to thought about, and that everyone else needs to embrace. Now democratic leadership, we know it obviously theoretically is a leadership that gives a voice to the people. That means whatever decision need to be taken has to involve everyone else. It means people need to have a say in those decisions that affect their lives. Basically, that is the principle of democracy. People must participate in the making of their own lives, right? So it means you make decision and you let people to elect those decisions, and whatever decisions get the most votes is the decision that needs to be implemented, right? We know about the democratic leadership. Now, the transformational leadership is based on transforming other people to make them agents of their own change. It means you teach people, you give people information, you show people the way so that people can walk by themselves. This is what actually the transformational leadership means. Now, the question is, after everything that we have exposed here, after what you know already and your own experience, what can be a better leadership style for Africa and its future? We hope to have your comment, to have your engagements, to have your feedback in our interactive session that will come as already indicated on the email that you received. So please make time to be there. Let us engage and discuss, and eventually forge a way forward for our liberation and our emancipation as African people. Thank you very much, leaders. If you are not a leader, you are then a potential leader or a future leader. Thank you very much. Think again deep about this presentation. Bring your feedback. I don't say that this is a perfect. It has to be improved, and it can be improved to be made correct. It can be corrected, it can be challenged, and in that process, as I said, we bring together our ideas. This is our concept as part of ACUP. This is what we think to be the proper style of leadership. I've explained about the challenge, I've explained about the limitations, I've explained about the role of leadership in Africa today, I've explained the leadership style that we need, right? So the question is, what do you think about it? So bring your insight. Let us cook this together. Maybe in the next session, we may revise this lesson, come up with a strong concept of leadership that will help us as African people to achieve our collective agenda of liberation and emancipation. Thank you very much. Support the free-minded in any way you can to make this agenda move forward. We are aiming to build a residential school, a homeschool actually, to get our children there so that we can also indoctrinate them with an Afrocentric perspective of the world, because we have been so much indoctrinated with Eurocentric perspective of the world. And as I said, our aim is to create new leaders in Africa. We need to keep these people away from current propaganda and provide them with Afrocentric perception of life or thinking, so that these leaders can lead Africa to the way that Africa expects to see herself, and to the future that we all expect for Africa. If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets, this revolution is in the mind. Peace and power. Thank you very much. See you again.